So let's talk about one of the fundamental misunderstandings people have about manifestation and manifestation period. Is people think that manifestation is about creating a reality. It's about bringing something into fruition. It's about bringing that experience. It's about jumping the timeline. It's not what manifestation is. Manifestation is about revealing what was there this entire time. It's not about getting something. It's about knowing that this thing already exists into the spectrum of your experience right now. You see, the subconscious mind only understands the right now. And so if it's not happening right now, it's not happening. And so the problem is, from a general scale, most people are approaching manifestation as if they are missing something. They look at their current life, they compare it to where they want to be, and they conclude that the desired reality exists somewhere outside of them, either in the future or in a different set of circumstances. And from that assumption, everything becomes a process of acquisition. They try to think differently, act differently, and behave in ways that will eventually bring the result into their life. But that entire approach is structurally flawed. Because the moment you define something as something you need to reach, you define yourself as someone who is not there yet. That identity is not just a concept. It becomes the lens through which you perceive everything. It shapes how you interpret delay, how you evaluate progress, and how you respond to uncertainty. So even while you're taking the action, you are doing so from a position that contradicts the outcome itself. And because reality reflects identity, not effort, you continue to experience the same gap you are trying to close. And so what you need to understand is the act of getting it reinforces the separation. The idea of getting something implies that it is not currently yours. That implication governs behavior more than you realize. When you relate to something as external, your system organizes around it as something to monitor and eventually obtain. You think in terms of timing, you measure progress, and you react to whether or not it is appearing quick enough. And that reaction to the world is not neutral. It continuously reinforces the idea that the outcome is not yet part of your reality. And remember, the subconscious mind only understands the right now. This will create a feedback loop. You look for it, you don't see it, you interpret it as absence, and that interpretation stabilizes the identity or frequency of not having it. Over time, that identity becomes more consistent than the desire itself. So even when you introduce new actions or new thoughts, you are still utilizing it from the same position of separation. And because the position has not changed, the results reorganize back to the same pattern that's governing your current life. And so what we have to do is change the structure from which you are operating on in reality. And so what you need to understand about the structure is this. Every experience you have is produced through a consistent structure. Your identity determines your perception. Your perception determines interpretation. Your interpretation determines response. Response determines behavioral patterns, and behavioral patterns produce outcomes. Most people are living on the surface level. Instead of changing the identity that determines their perception, they'll change it at the outcome level directly, without realizing that the outcome is the last expression of everything that came before it. If your identity, who you are beneath, is unchanged, your perception will continue to filter reality the same way. If your perception remains the same, your interpretation will assign the same meanings. If your interpretation remains the same, your response will follow the same logic. And if your response remains the same, your behavior will return to the same patterns. And this is why people experience cycles rather than progress. They temporarily interrupt the structure, but they do not replace it. Manifestation is not about interrupting the pattern once. It is about becoming the version of yourself that no longer produces it. You see, the universe, the Most High God, the infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call it, whatever you worship and pray, is extremely intelligent. However, it can only give you what you are, not what you're not. And so at a certain point, your spirit is going to call for expansion. I want to be in a happy, loving relationship. I want to treat myself better. I want to treat myself with love and respect. I want to make more money. I want to be social media famous. I want my business to double my monthly revenue. When your spirit is calling for expansion, you need to understand that the universe understands that you're ready for expansion, but it also knows that there's something internally that is holding you back. And so what the universe does is that it'll cycle the same pattern that you keep repeating, and it'll send it back to you. And this can manifest in the same form of relationships. You keep finding the same people in the same scenarios. This can start out as a new idea, a new business venture that ends up failing, a new idea. It can manifest into some way in your life where you're going through an event, circumstance, or condition, and you would perceive it as negative. You would perceive it as a negative event in your identity, not understanding that the reason why you're going through it is that the universe, the infinite intelligence inside of you, understands that there's parts of you that need to go to that next level. They can't come with you to that next level. It has to be removed from you. Thoughts of doubt, fear, anxiety, worry, not being good enough, not feeling lovable, not feeling like money is your birthright. Whatever you're going through, it'll send you something to remind you, to test you, to see if you're ready for that next level. And unless you change the identity that is going to perceive the event itself, you're going to remain the same. Your awareness of being able to perceive your life in reality is your superpower. You get to determine what this thing means to you. Two people. One person got cheated on, broken up with. Same thing happened to person B. This person went through the event and learned the behavioral patterns of, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, love is hard to find, I'm not worthy of love. That's what happened to person A. Person B went through the same exact thing, but understood that there was something more so wrong with the partner than him, because he loved freely. There was something wrong with his partner. And he understands now that that was a learning lesson for him so that he can go to the next relationship and not make the same mistake when he sees those patterns. Two people, same event, they perceive it two completely different ways. This person is going to find love, and this person is going to manifest the same relationship until they realize that the universe is trying to show them through the same relationships that the problem is self. The problem is him. The problem is that he's not changing. The problem is that he's going out there looking for love, looking for someone to fill that peace inside of him, not realizing that he needs to give it to himself. Once he gives it to himself, his identity changes. He perceives things differently. His interpretation of the things that he's going through is going to change, and that changes reality. And then eventually, he will find someone that loves him just as much as he loves himself. And so, what does it mean that that reality already exists now? When it is said that reality already exists, I'm not trying to be philosophical. It's structural. Every outcome corresponds to a specific identity. That configuration includes a stable way of thinking, interpreting, deciding, and responding. The outcome is simply the natural consequence of that identity being active over time. So the version of your life that you want already has a corresponding identity that produces it. You are not building that outcome from nothing. You are either aligned with that identity or you are not. The universe speaks in two languages. You either have it or you don't. If you are not aligned with it, your current identity continues to generate its own outcomes. If you are aligned with it, the outcomes associated with that identity begin to appear. Not because you forced them into existence, but because you are no longer maintaining the conditions that were preventing them in the first place. This is why manifestation is actually revelation. You are not creating something new. You are removing the internal structure that is making your manifestation inaccessible. And that's why I said it's about revealing what is already there. And so by revealing what is already there, because the only thing that's happening is the right now, you're removing the parts of yourself that do not align with that identity. Your habits, your thought processes, what you emotionally react to, the way you view yourself, and the way you view yourself in relation to the world. You change yourself at a core because you understand that the parts that do not serve you are not going to take you to that next level. And the universe is an estranged mistress this way. If you are not willing to change, She will make you change. And she'll manifest, the subconscious mind will manifest a negative event what you would perceive as negative, or you'll go through something negative internally, whether it be your nervous system reacting or your mind fighting against you. It'll manifest something negative, whether internally or externally, to keep you in the old identity to see if you really have changed. And that's where most people fail in the process, is they don't understand that they need to be able to detach externally from the desire. You need to be able to detach from the world itself. And that is why it says in scripture, Romans 12:2, do not be conformed by the world, but be renewed by a transformation of your mind. You have to be able to go through these events that you're going to experience in your reality, because we all go through things that we would perceive as negative. You got to be able to go through these things that you would subscribe or perceive as negative and be able to be unshaken at your core. Look at it and say, I am that I am. I know that I have my desire already. I'm not trying to get it. I'm not going to look for conformity. I don't need signs. I don't need proof. I am the proof. I am the confirmation. The moment I made a decision, it meant that it was mine. You need to be able to train your mind to be this way. And so, why does needing the desire prevent it? The moment you need something, it establishes dependency. And dependency reinforces absence. When you feel that you need something in order to feel complete, stable, or successful, you define yourself as someone who does not currently have it. That definition influences every layer of the structure that produces experience. It also introduces pressure. Under pressure, your perception narrows. You begin to overanalyze, assign meanings prematurely, and react to situations before they have fully unfolded. These reactions are not aligned with the identity that already has the result. They are aligned with the identity that is trying to secure it. So the issue is not desire itself. The issue is the identity that forms when desire becomes need. That identity is structurally incompatible with the outcome. And as long as it remains active, the outcome cannot stabilize. And so, when you give the desire to yourself internally, you detach from needing it externally. And I'm going to explain to you how you do this in a moment. But what you need to understand is that from a certain level, there's always going to be a level of neediness that you needed to happen, especially if you have bills to pay, you have a family to take care of, or you're feeling lonely, sad, you're angry, you're frustrated. There's a part of you that's like, I'm detached, I don't care. But there's still a small part of you that knows that if they had the desire, they would feel better than they do now. That's the part we have to kill. You should be just as neutral about your current experience as you would be in your desired reality. If there's any level of disparity, then the scale is tipped over, and the favor is always going to be on the version of yourself that you're fighting. If you don't believe that you're experiencing it now, it's not going to show up. And so the scale is going to go against your favor. And the old reality, the old identity, the old structure is going to win. And it's going to keep you in that loop because you're still needing it to show up. How do we get rid of the need? You have to give it to yourself internally. Having something internally is not about convincing yourself or generating emotion. It's about removing the sense of separation between you and the outcome. When something feels like it is already yours, you do not relate to it as something that needs to arrive. You are not checking for it. You are not waiting for confirmation. You are not structuring your behavior around its appearance. Instead, it becomes part of your baseline. This changes the way that you think, but more importantly, it changes the way you interpret reality. Situations that would previously trigger doubt are now neutral. Delays no longer imply absence. Temporary contradictions no longer define the outcome. This stability is what allows behavior to shift naturally. You are no longer acting from uncertainty, so your decisions become cleaner and your responses become consistent. How do we do this? I teach my clients, my high-performing entrepreneurs, CEOs, day traders, influencers, music artists, I teach them how to shift in the new identity two ways. Neville Goddard called it living in the end. I call it the two-phase process. Part one, you need to think from the version of yourself who already has the desire. Step one, think as if you already have it. You should not have a thought that you're going to get there, that you will get there a month from now, 2 months from now, 6 years from now. You must know that it is already yours. You must act and think from the version of yourself that knows it's already yours. For example, I want to take my coaching business to $1 million this year. I'm not making my business from the version of myself who is trying to make $1 million. I'm embodying the version of myself who would make $1 million now. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, okay, what would the version of myself that made millions of dollars or made $1 million this year, what would he do right now? Probably search up a YouTube video, how I made $1 million in my coaching business, my consulting business. Start studying, start researching, start finding the holes in my game, looking at my marketing, looking at my funnel, analyzing, deciphering, looking at my current system and saying, why am I not there yet? Because I know I already have it. And from those lens, from that identity, everything will be revealed upon itself. The right video will show up. I'll hear the right information. I'll meet the right people, the right synchronicities. And soon enough, by compounding that identity every single day, thinking that I already have the $1 million, the $1 million business, what ends up happening is I manifest it because I remove everything that was standing between me and that version of me in reality where I was making $1 million. You remove it. You remove every part of you that is holding back, and then you get there. So that's step one. Step one is thinking from the end, thinking as if you already have your desire. Not thinking from the beginning, not thinking from the middle, thinking from the end. That's step one. Step two is simple. Feeling the desired reality now. What would it feel like if you already had your desire? It's not about generating excitement. It's not about generating happiness. It's about generating the calmness, the relaxation, the bliss, the fulfillment, the abundance. You would feel relaxed in your desired reality. You wouldn't be jumping up and down. It would be as normal as your current reality because that version of you neutralized that experience. That's why they live it every single day. No one wakes up on dopamine highs unless they're on drugs. So you would wake up in your desired reality and you would brush your teeth, you would use the restroom, you would take a shower, you would get up like you normally do, and then you would go about your day. It just would look slightly different or maybe vastly different than the life you're experiencing now, but you wouldn't be emotionally dependent on it. You would be neutral. And so feeling is step two, feeling what it would feel like if you already had your desire. And so it's a combination of thinking that you already have the desire and feeling the calmness, the relaxation, the bliss, the fulfillment, the neutrality of already having that desire. And that is why it says in Matthew 6:33, seek the kingdom of God first, and then everything else will be added upon your righteousness. And if you understand where the location of the kingdom of God is, Luke 17:21, it's within you. And so Matthew 6:33 says, seek the peace within you first, and then you will have everything externally. So you combine thinking as if you already have the desire and feeling the calmness, the relaxation of already being in that reality. If you combine those two every single day, as best as you can with discipline, day in, day out, your desired reality will have no choice but to manifest. I see it all the time. That's how I manifested my dream life. And this is why the external only shifts after this. The external world reflects consistent behavioral patterns over time, not isolated moments. When identity changes, the way you perceive and interpret reality changes. When your interpretation changes, your responses changes. And when your responses changes, your behavior reorganizes. And when behavior reorganizes, the pattern that produces your outcomes changes. This is why the external does not shift immediately. It reflects the dominant pattern, not a temporary state. Once the identity is stable, the previous pattern can no longer sustain itself. The outcomes associated with the old identity begin to dissolve, and the new outcomes begin to appear. Not because they were created, but because the structure that excluded them originally is no longer active. And so this is the role of delay and why people revert in the creative process. There's always going to be a delay between identity and reflection, between the spiritual, the mental, and the physical planes. This delay is where most people lose the shift. They change internally and then immediately look to the external world for confirmation, for truth, for understanding. When they do not see it yet, they interpret that as failure and return to the previous identity that was housing them. That return reinstalls the old structure and then the process resets, and now you're stuck in a loop again. So the requirement is not intensity. It is consistency without immediate feedback. You must be able to remain aligned without using the external world as proof. Because the moment you use reality to decide who you are, you return to the identity that produced it. So this is the point where manifestation stops being a process. It's not because the desire disappears. It's because the relationship to the desire has changed. You are no longer orienting yourself towards the goal. You are not structuring your thoughts around when it will arrive. You are not evaluating your current position against it. The idea of getting it no longer applies because there is nothing left to get. What replaces that orientation is a stable sense of normalcy. The outcome is no longer something you are trying to produce. It is something that is already accounted for in how you would see yourself. Your decisions reflect it. Your interpretations reflect it. Your responses reflect it. At this stage, behavior no longer requires effort to align. It aligns automatically because there is no internal contradiction left to resolve. And so, what most people will miss at this stage of the manifestation process, most people will assume that once the external desire appears, once it's manifested, then they will feel like they have it. But the structure is actually reversed. You stop relating to it as something you need to confirm before there is anything to confirm. This is not about feeling confident or positive. It is about no longer using external conditions as a reference point for your identity. You're not asking, is this working? Because the question itself implies separation. You are no longer reacting to delay because delay no longer carries meaning. You are not trying to maintain a state because there is no opposing state to return to. At this point, the identity is not something you are holding. It is something you are no longer leaving. And so this is the final break where the separation ends. As long as there is a version of you that sees the outcome as something to reach, there is still separation. And that separation will show up in monitoring progress, reacting to temporary conditions, interpreting absence as failure, and waiting for confirmation. Each of these reinforces the idea that the outcome is not yet yours. The shift happens when those behaviors no longer occur, not because you are suppressing them, but because the identity that produced them is no longer active. There is no more checking, no more waiting, and no more measuring. Not because you are forcing detachment, but because there is nothing left to detach from. And so, my final message for you is this. You do not experience your desire because you pursued it correctly. You experience it when there is no longer a version of you that relates to it as something you do not have. As long as there is distance, there will be a delay. As long as there is need, there will be absence. As long as you are trying to get something, you reinforce that it is not yours. When the identity shifts completely, when the outcome is no longer something you are moving toward, but something that is already accounted for in who you are, there is nothing left to maintain. There is nothing left maintaining the previous reality. And at that point, the external world has no choice but to reflect what is already established internally. And so you don't get your desire. You stop being the version of yourself that doesn't have it, and then it becomes visible. And that's how I manifested my dream life. That's how I got all my desires in the present moment. I went through the ringer trying to manifest my dream life. I chased it. I slept in my car. I went to cities I wasn't supposed to. I did whatever it took. I used the motto, whatever it takes to get there, not realizing that the only reason why I didn't manifest was because of me internally. It didn't matter what I did externally. If I was operating from lack, I was going to create from lack. And so the problem was me. No matter where I ran to, the problem was me. And so I had to face the man in the mirror. I had to face the man in the mirror and realize that the only reason why my subconscious mind is blocking the manifestation from coming into a physical reality is because I do not believe in it 100%. And so I had to truly convince myself with no limiting beliefs, with a calmed, relaxed nervous system, not chasing and running at the world at full speed, that I was in my desired reality. And when I pulled back, I gained my sense of grounding. I leveled myself. And then I put my head down and I started working aligned, following my intuition, thinking from the end, and feeling what it would feel like. Then my content blew up. Then my business blew up. Then the clients came. Then the money came. And so it starts with you. Realize that reality is a reflection of you. And then once you see it as a reflection, then you understand that everything that is happening to you is for a reason. It's not a coincidence. And because it's happening for a reason, you get to read it. And then you get to ask yourself, what is this revealing about myself now that is currently showing me that reality needs me to get rid of this? Because it's trying to get me to that next level. God is always going to give you everything right now. But the problem is that you do not have a vessel that has the sustainability to receive that desire now. And so you must extract the parts of your vessel that is holding you back to receiving the desires that God has for you. And when you do that, reality is yours. I'll see you guys in the next video. Also, if you're a CEO, entrepreneur, day trader, influencer, whatever, you have a skill that you're leveraging to the world, and you want to double, triple your monthly income, or you need help with identity work, stabilizing a new identity in a new reality, hit the link in my bio and book a one-on-one call. I'll see you guys in the next one.